When we talk about why young people become involved in criminality or are targeted by gangs, it's important to remember that any young person could be vulnerable if certain pressures are present. Vulnerability is not about weakness or inevitability, it is about circumstances, experiences, and levels of support. Some groups of young people, however, face additional pressures that increase their risk. This doesn't mean that they're destined for criminality. It means that they may need more understanding, consistency, and support from the adults around them. This video explores some of the groups who are more vulnerable and the reasons behind that vulnerability. Young people growing up in poverty or deprivation can experience a range of pressures that increase their vulnerability. This can include overcrowded or unsuitable housing, a lack of private or personal space, and parents who are under significant pressure to provide. Where rates of deprivation are higher, gang activity tends to be more prevalent. And those involved with gangs and criminality can look to recruit young people by offering them opportunities to make money illegitimately, as well as free food and access to drugs. What initially can look like support can then become a cycle of dependency, manipulation, and exploitation. Young people with special educational needs are also often more vulnerable, especially when their needs are misunderstood or not supported. Examples of this include undiagnosed special educational needs, as this can often lead to behavioural difficulties in school and increase the likelihood of them being excluded. Autistic young people may be more trusting and may also take things more literally, which could lead them vulnerable to grooming and coercion. As well as this, young people who have been diagnosed with ADHD may be more likely to engage in risk-taking and impulsive behaviour, and as a result, could be more vulnerable to peer pressure. Without the right support, young people may struggle in school, become disengaged or isolated, and lose trust in adults or systems. These emotional and social gaps can make them prime targets for exploitation. Young people with experience of the care system are also statistically some of the most vulnerable groups in society. This is for a number of reasons, but because many care leavers have experienced trauma, instability, repeated change of settings and environments and professionals. Looked after children and those with experience of the care system are statistically one of the most vulnerable groups in society. This is because many care leavers have experienced a number of adverse childhood experiences, such as trauma, instability, family breakdown, and repeated change of carers and professionals. As a result, many young people with experience of the care system may crave a sense of belonging, stability, and trusting connection. Gangs understand this and may offer these kind of young people a sense of family, protection, and loyalty. In reality though, these forms of belonging are often exploitative, manipulative, and coercive. Adverse childhood experiences and trauma also significantly impact a young person's understanding of safety, relationships, and risk. They may have experienced domestic violence, abuse or neglect, violence in the community such as stabbings or shootings, and even traumatic events such as Grenfell. Someone's experience of trauma can lead to a number of different reactions, such as hypervigilance, anxiety, emotional dysregulation, and a desire for protection and control. Gangs may position themselves in the young person's life as a source of safety and strength, but ultimately they will expose them to even greater risk of harm. In families or neighbourhoods where gang involvement is normalised, the young person may feel that they're expected to follow in the same steps, feel pressured by a sense of loyalty, afraid of the consequences if they don't comply. For some, criminal involvement can feel inevitable, even if they do not actively seek it out. As well as this, some young people may use substances to cope with stress, trauma, or their mental health struggles. The substance misuse, even in a casual sense, can increase vulnerability. Drug use can create additional pressures, such as the financial cost, the growing dependency, the increased likelihood of risk-taking behaviour, and spending more time out late or in unsupervised locations. As well as this, young people who've been excluded from school or who are not in education, employment or training can also be particularly vulnerable. When a young person is neat, they lose routine, structure, purpose and stability. This also creates large gaps of unstructured time and criminal groups can move in to fill these gaps. It is, however, important to note that some gangs encourage young people to remain in school so they stay under the radar and go unnoticed. Vulnerability doesn't exist just outside of school. In conclusion, many young people will relate to at least one of these factors, and that alone does not mean that they will become involved in criminality. Vulnerability is shaped by circumstances, not by character. What, however, can make the difference is understanding what pressures that young people face today, avoiding judgment and labels, providing consistent, early support, creating safe, trusting relationships, and offering positive alternatives and opportunities. With the right support, at the right time, vulnerability does not need to lead to exploitation.